Hey everyone, Adam Simmons here from Dgtl Infra, short for Digital Infrastructure. Fiber provides the core connectivity for internet traffic globally by connecting cellular tower sites, data centers, office buildings, homes, and more into the broader global network. In part one of this two-part series, I'm going to give you an overview of the fiber piece of digital infrastructure, and specifically the segments of fiber affecting enterprises. We break down the key characteristics of dark fiber and enterprise fiber, who the major providers are, and who the key customers are in different industries. You will understand one of the big secrets of the telecom industry being that no carrier owns its entire network. So stay tuned and I will break this all down for you. Before I do, be sure to subscribe to the Dgtl Infra channel and turn on the notifications so you don't miss my next in-depth video that is coming out soon. Now, let's jump into the video. So fiber optic cables consist of bundled glass strands that transfer data signals into optical light. Optical equipment is used to transform these data signals into light that travels along fiber threads and is reconverted at the other end of the fiber strand. Fiber is the glue that connects the entire digital infrastructure ecosystem together. Specifically, fiber is the connective tissue that enables all of the other three segments of digital infrastructure to work, including towers, data centers, and the combination of small cells and distributed antenna systems. Fiber is a part of digital infrastructure that has numerous applications. Indeed, there are two overall categories we can group fiber into in order to help differentiate its various business models. First is business-to-business, or B2B, fiber. Within this segment is dark fiber, which is also known as wholesale fiber. Breaking this down further, dark fiber is typically structured in either a long-term lease, which requires a recurring payment, or is purchased through an indefeasible right of use, known as an IRU, which requires a one-time payment. The other subsegment of business-to-business fiber is called enterprise fiber, and within enterprise fiber are four different products, notably wavelength, Ethernet, IP, which is short for Internet Protocol, and SONET. The second major category of fiber is business-to-consumer, or B2C, fiber, which can also be known as broadband. Within this second segment are two subsegments. First is fiber to the node, which abbreviated is FTTN, and second is fiber to the home, which abbreviated is FTTH. In part one of this two-part series, we will really be focusing on business-to-business, or B2B fiber, which you see on the left side of the video. So before we get started, it's important to understand how fiber is measured, because we'll be discussing this throughout the video. Route miles constitute the actual number of non-overlapping miles that a fiber network traverses, whereas strand miles represent the number of route miles in a network multiplied by the number of fiber strands within each cable on that network. Let me give you an example. If a 10-mile network segment has a 144 count fiber installed, it would represent 10 times 144, which is equivalent to 1,440 fiber miles. So that's how you think of strand miles. So now let's jump in and try to classify some of the different network sections of business-to-business fiber. So on screen is a fiber network map shown for Zayo, which is one of the largest providers of dark fiber, who has a network spanning over 130,000 fiber route miles and 13.2 million fiber strand miles. So this represents an average of 99 fibers per route. So business-to-business fiber can be broadly classified into two types. You have terrestrial fiber, which is land-based, and you have subsea cables, which are below the water. So within terrestrial fiber, first are metro network sections, which can also be known as intra-city, and these are depicted by the orange dots on the page. So this is optical fiber that runs within the same city from the central router into routers located in the fiber provider's on-net buildings, an example of which is an office building. Metro fiber runs in a ring architecture, which provides redundancy so that if the fiber is cut, data can still be transmitted to the central router by directing traffic in the opposite direction around the ring. Metro fiber has high-count fiber cables, sometimes more than 800 fibers per cable, so it is very dense. and pricing on metro fiber is relatively stable as carriers emphasize the capabilities and services that they are able to provide rather than competing on the basis of price. The second type of terrestrial fiber is known as long-haul and regional network sections. These can also be known as intercity. You'll see them in the video depicted by the green or teal color lines that run across the country. So long-haul and regional is optical fiber connecting together different metro markets and major cities in North America, Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Australia. For example, connecting on-net buildings in Chicago and New York would be an example of long-haul fiber. Long-haul and regional fiber connects on-net buildings in small and mid-sized markets back to major data centers, wireless switching centers, and carrier hotels in larger markets. Pricing on long-haul and regional network sections is done through wholesale transit pricing, which continues to decline as the supply of capacity on long-haul and regional networks remains exponentially greater than the demand, and the only distinguishing characteristic between providers is price. So that provides an overview of both types of terrestrial fiber. Now let's move on to the second classification for business-to-business fiber, which is subsea cables. Subsea cables carry 99% of all international telecommunications for business, personal, and government use. Fiber providers have global networks, and these are connected by transoceanic circuits known as subsea cables. For example, a fiber provider like Lumen Technologies connects the North America, Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Australia portions of its network through these subsea cables. Let's use an example of Google Cloud, which is shown on screen. So this is an example of Google Cloud connecting its data center in Northern Virginia on the left-hand side of the video to another one of its data centers in Belgium on the right-hand side of the video. From both the Northern Virginia and Belgium data centers, Google Cloud runs terrestrial fiber to what are known as cable landing stations, which are situated on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. From each cable landing station, subsea cables are run along the depth of the ocean floor across the Atlantic Ocean, creating that physical link of connectivity between the United States and Europe. Google can either build its own subsea cables or lease fiber pairs on the subsea cables of third parties in order to ensure it has adequate international connectivity for its customers. So now that we understand the different classifications of business-to-business fiber, why is fiber so important? And we can really think about this in terms of the insatiable demand for more fiber. So data demand growth will require additional capacity on existing fiber lines for data transmissions. Global internet traffic is expected to grow 25% per year, primarily from video traffic growth. While most of that traffic growth will come from consumer video consumption, enterprise IP traffic is also projected to grow 30% per year, driven by video adoption and the migration to the cloud. Beyond the growth in data, there are also still more homes, offices, schools, and businesses that still rely on legacy copper to provide internet and voice services, which can simply not compete from a quality of service standpoint to fiber. Telecom companies have fiber footprints in certain geographies, but often rely on third parties where it would not be cost efficient for them to build. And so we'll talk about both the telecom and fiber companies coming up. So with that overview of both the physical asset of fiber and why it is so important, let's move into a few of the business models that distinguish business-to-business fiber. So first is dark fiber, which is also known as wholesale fiber. Dark fiber leases individual fiber optic cable strands and provides dedicated high-bandwidth fixed network capacity, but it does not provide any communications services across the fiber, meaning that there are no modulating electronics or optronics equipment. Instead, the customer, which is often a carrier, provides the electronics to light the fiber and assumes responsibility for configuring the network, monitoring, and operating the service that they choose to run. Indeed, the network can be customized to run multiple protocols over a single strand of fiber. Therefore, the fiber is simply known as a dumb pipe until the customer lights it up with optical and routing equipment. In terms of the physical asset, the owner of the dark fiber builds the route, lays the conduit, which is that rigid tubing that you see around the fiber, and lays down the dark fiber. Currently, companies are building new dark fiber with 240 to 480 strands of fiber, which is very dense. Historically, dark fiber routes built 10 years ago would only have 20 strands or 40 strands, thus these older routes have much less capacity. Indeed, the ability to add more fiber in the network is limited to the type of deployment. For example, it is very difficult to add fiber strands unless fiber is deployed in a conduit. In terms of customers, dark fiber is the ideal solution for sophisticated companies that have large bandwidth needs, have expertise to manage them, and want more control over their networks. Dark fiber is known as carrier-to-carrier traffic, where connectivity services are provided for wireless carriers. Think of someone like AT&T. Specifically, connectivity can be to the wireless carriers' towers and small cells. Other customers include very large consumers of bandwidth, such as internet service providers, also known as ISPs, cloud service providers, and media and content companies. Additionally, services are provided to international carriers that need traffic in the United States. So let's walk through some of the specific customers of dark fiber from those categories. Starting in wireline, this includes companies like Zayo, Verizon, Windstream, AT&T, Cogent, and Lumen. Many of these wireline customers are in fact providers of dark fiber themselves, which emphasizes what we spoke about earlier and will also elaborate on further in this video. That is, that no fiber provider owns its entire network, and therefore leases capacity from other fiber providers. The second customer group are wireless carriers, and these include the likes of Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Dish Network, and US Cellular. Wireless carriers have developed a propensity for leasing dark fiber for backhaul rather than using Ethernet circuits, which are a form of lit services. The third grouping of dark fiber customers are data center and cloud service providers. These include Equinix, Digital Realty, CyrusOne, Amazon Web Services, also known as AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. The fourth grouping of dark fiber customers are content providers, and these include Apple, Disney, Facebook, Netflix, Microsoft, and Riot Games. Over the past 5 years, dark fiber has become increasingly important to both cloud and content providers, building their own wide area networks, known as WANs, to interconnect their geographically dispersed data centers. These content providers prioritize control and thus use dark fiber over traditional lit services. Furthermore, demand for dark fiber will continue to increase as large internet content providers build out their own networks to support their over-the-top, known as OTT, services. These companies include Netflix, Hulu, Prime Video, Disney for its Disney Plus service, and Comcast for its Peacock service. One area of dark fiber that's notable to highlight is fiber to the tower, which abbreviated is FTTT. This can also be referred to as backhaul. Fiber to the tower is a notable customer group and use case for dark fiber that we'll highlight now. So carriers use dark fiber to connect and backhaul their tower base stations to central sites. Tower base stations use immense and increasing amounts of data traffic, particularly with the introduction of 5G to consumers. Backhaul is the physical connection between the tower radio base station and the core network. Smartphones transmit and receive their signals from radio base stations, which typically sit on top of buildings or towers in this case. Core networks are usually situated in central office locations of the carrier and are usually far from the radio base station itself. The most commonly used backhauling methods to connect them are microwave links, copper connections, and increasingly fiber, which is why we're highlighting it here. Efficient backhauling of this traffic improves throughput and therefore user experience on the network, which can only be done through fiber optic backhaul solutions. Another factor which makes fiber imperative is the increase in small cell deployments needed for 5G networks, particularly for high band or millimeter wave spectrum. small cells are primarily backhauled through fiber connections. Indeed, wireless carriers including AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile are the key customers for fiber-to-the-tower services. It's worth also highlighting in dark fiber its lease profile and the services sold. So an example of a typical lease of dark fiber includes Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, or Google Cloud leasing 4 pairs to 8 pairs of fiber. These cloud service providers are more likely to repeatedly lease dark fiber in smaller increments as and when they need additional capacity. In contrast, enterprises like American Airlines will often lease 20 pairs of fiber at a time. The lease will often be in larger capacities to account for a specific project or major corporate initiatives, but be much less frequent than the cloud service providers. It's also worth noting that customers typically lease dark fiber in pairs in order to account for both uplink and downlink. Finally, we'll touch on the contract term of dark fiber. These are long-term lease agreements with durations between 10 years and 25 years, with some indefeasible rights of use extending to 35 and even 50 years. In terms of pricing for dark fiber leases, it is generally based on several variables, including the number of strands, the number of miles, the supply and demand on the route, which is generally competition, and the service provider offering the services. The actual pricing models for dark fiber leases are typically either recurring payments, which are fixed and on a monthly basis, but often include annual price escalators to account for inflation, or some customers pay an upfront lump sum along with annual maintenance charges, which is referred to as an indefeasible right of use, known as an IRU. So with that overview of dark fiber complete, let's move on to enterprise fiber. Enterprise fiber is where the service provider lights the fiber and enables connectivity for the customer. The physical asset of enterprise fiber is where the owner has a fiber cut and it takes the fiber and builds a fiber lateral into an enterprise, whether that is an office building, an industrial park, or corporate headquarters. The customers of enterprise fiber include businesses or enterprises, both medium and large, so think about them as office buildings. Beyond enterprises, enterprise fiber also targets customers in government agencies, financial services, educational systems, and healthcare organizations. Let's touch on a few specific customers in the enterprise fiber segment from those categories. So in finance, customers can include the likes of Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Barclays, Citi, the New York Stock Exchange, and Bloomberg. In the public sector and healthcare, customers can include the United States Department of Homeland Security, the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, the National Institutes of Health, Highmark Health, and the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. In manufacturing and transportation, customers include ExxonMobil, American Airlines, United Airlines, United Parcel Service or UPS, and Walmart. So now let's touch on the lease profile and the services sold for enterprise fiber. Enterprise fiber services include more traditional telecom offerings like wavelength, Ethernet, IP, and SONET services, which can be sold to an enterprise user. The fiber provider uses its own optronics to manage the network and provides access for a recurring, fixed, or in some cases, usage-based fee. Many service providers sell lit services instead of dark fiber since lit services carry much higher recurring revenue. Selling lit Ethernet services to 4 wireless carriers is far more attractive economically as compared to leasing dark fiber to only 1 wireless carrier. Finally, in terms of contract terms for enterprise fiber, these range from 2 to 5 years in duration, and customers pay on the amount and type of bandwidth service that they purchase. This can range from 1 gigabit per second of capacity to 100 gigabits per second of capacity. So now we'll briefly discuss the different providers and competition for both dark fiber and enterprise fiber, and then we'll touch on who those specific companies are. So dark fiber is limited to carriers with ample supply of fiber to meet specific customer demands. The incumbent telecom companies like AT&T and Verizon and cable companies typically do not offer dark fiber services due in part to cannibalization risk and a desire to offer bundled solutions. The dark fiber business has low churn but requires higher capital investment to build the network. Some of the largest dark fiber providers include Lumen Technologies, Zayo, Unity Group, and Crown Castle. One of the big secrets of the telecom industry is that no carrier owns its entire network. So in turn, each carrier also leases fiber from virtually all of the top telecom providers. In this way, there is a great degree of cooperation in the telecom industry. For example, the network backbone of Cogent Communications is leased on indefeasible right-of-use contracts from 262 different dark fiber suppliers. Moving now to the enterprise fiber providers and competition. In enterprise fiber, it is dominated in the United States by AT&T, Verizon, and Lumen Technologies, who are considered the incumbents. Cable companies have also made inroads into enterprise fiber, but mainly focus on small and medium-sized businesses. Enterprise fiber is an intense competitive environment. Enterprise customers typically have 4 to 5 connectivity options to choose from, including large telecom incumbents and cable providers. Therefore, given competition and the short contract duration of 2 to 5 years, enterprise fiber has high churn rates. However, it also has high gross growth before churn, making net growth of enterprise fiber about 3% per year. The providers of enterprise fiber in the United States include AT&T, Verizon, Lumen Technologies, Charter Communications, Frontier Communications, Cogent Communications, and Windstream. Let's walk through the 10 largest dark and enterprise fiber providers in the United States measured by route miles, which are shown on the screen. So first is AT&T with 1.1 million route miles. The key area of focus for AT&T is enterprise fiber, and it has a 30% enterprise market share. Number 2 is Verizon Communications with 1 million fiber route miles. The key area of focus for Verizon is again enterprise fiber, but with a 20% enterprise market share. Third is Lumen Technologies, which has 450,000 fiber route miles, and its key area of focus is both dark fiber and enterprise fiber, given that it has a significant 20% enterprise market share, but also offers significant dark fiber services. Fourth is Charter Communications, which has 250,000 fiber route miles, and its key area of focus is enterprise fiber with a smaller but growing 7% enterprise market share. The fifth largest fiber provider shown is Frontier Communications. Frontier has 180,000 fiber route miles, and its key area of focus is enterprise fiber, with its business shifting towards fiber from declining legacy copper infrastructure. The sixth fiber provider shown is Zayo, with 133,000 fiber route miles. Zayo's key area of focus is dark fiber, which comprises 1/3 of its fiber revenues, and enterprise fiber, which comprises 2/3 of its fiber revenues. Although Zayo generates more revenue from enterprise fiber, its dark fiber business is quite significant amongst the industry. Seventh is Unity Group, with 124,000 fiber route miles. Unity's key area of focus is dark fiber, and Windstream, which is further down on the page, represents 65% of Unity's revenue. Eighth is Cogent Communications, with 95,000 fiber route miles. The key area of focus for Cogent is enterprise fiber, with a significant business in connectivity for office buildings. Ninth is Crown Castle, with 80,000 fiber route miles. Crown Castle's key area of focus is dark fiber, which uniquely supports its more than 70,000 small cell networks. And finally, number 10 is Windstream Holdings, which has 80,000 fiber route miles. Windstream's key area of focus is enterprise fiber, with its significant transport services business and its desire to shift from its legacy copper network. So hopefully you found this video on dark fiber and enterprise fiber helpful. If you did, then please share it with somebody you think might also find it helpful. Also, be sure to check out part 2 of this 2-part series, which is coming out tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In that video, we are going to give you an overview of consumer-facing fiber, which can also be thought as fiber-based broadband connectivity. Specifically, we dive into 2 of the most common ways in which fiber is deployed to your home, who the top 10 US broadband providers are, and explain why the cable companies currently dominate the US broadband market. With that, please consider subscribing to Dgtl Infra and visit us at dgtlinfra.com for more of the latest news on digital infrastructure. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like the video and post in the comments telling me what you found most surprising about fiber networks. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.